Welcome everyone to Charts Focus 1, where we teach you how to work hard and trade smart. In this video, I'll be going over the markets and what tickers we will be watching and trading for this week. Okay, so last week we had an incredible reversal that allowed us to see the losses of the past 2 weeks completely erased, and in just 2 days worth of movement. And so on Thursday, we had this very large bounce off of weekly lows. And thanks to this bounce, we saw the creation of this bullish engulfing candlestick. And at the close of this engulfing candlestick, we were able to reclaim and remount the daily 50 SMA. And then on Friday, we confirmed this big bounce on Thursday by going over the psychological whole number level of $400 and also retesting, reclaiming, and then remounting the daily 10 SMA by closing over $404. And so where do we go from here? Well, my maximum profit target, or just target, for SPY is at 406.50 by the end of the week. And that seems very, very close from where we closed at last week at $404.19. And there's a reason for that. Well, first of all, if you guys see this descending level of resistance here, this is the resistance trend line that we were respecting for most of February before we rejected for a final time, and we started that intermittent downtrend for about 2 weeks. Now, I want to extend this trend line. Why? Well, I truly believe that after rejecting it, there's a possibility that we can come back right to that resistance level. And if you guys see right over here, okay, depending on what day we retest this descending level of resistance, we will converge with this horizontal level of resistance at 406.50. And so whether it be tomorrow, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I want us to see a retest of this horizontal level of 406.50 plus this descending level of resistance trend line. However, there is a possibility that we can be cut short. And here's the reason why. We have the daily 21 SMA looming over the price. And why am I concerned with this? Well, first of all, we have crossed below the 406.50 level, which already provides us with a lot of resistance before we even retest the 406.50 level. And we have remounted the 10 SMA. And if you guys have been watching all of my recent videos or in the old videos in the past, you guys should know that once we have remounted the daily 10 SMA during a downtrend, okay, we start to see consolidation, or just simply a move of sideways action when we're stuck between the 10 and the 21 SMAs. And that usually happens right after we retest and reject at the 21 SMA. And so this works out perfectly for this week, as we will most likely consolidate this large move that we had since Thursday. All right, so if you guys want to know the percentage gain that we've had just from the last 2 trading days, here it is. So we moved nearly 3% in 2 days. That's a large move for an index ETF like this. And so this week, there is a huge possibility and most likely consolidation coming for us. And it will make sense for us to do that as we're stuck in between the daily 10 and 21 SMAs. And you might be thinking that that sounds very bearish, but in fact, it's not bearish. It's very, very bullish. because if we start consolidating, there's a good chance that we either form somewhat of an intraday bull flag or any other bullish chart pattern before we make an attempt at 406.50 and maybe, just maybe, break over this horizontal level of resistance at 406.50 and this descending level of resistance. And that will also be our official third retest of this descending level of resistance, since we had our first time over here, relatively speaking, and then our second time over here, relatively speaking as well. And possibly by the end of this week, we can see another retest at this descending level of resistance and at 406.50. Okay, with that daily perspective in mind, let's take a look at the weekly time frame. So SPY on the weekly is looking very, very bullish. So for the first 2 days of March, on Thursday and Friday, we're able to get a nice hammer candlestick. This is a very nice bullish reversal type of candle. And for the fact that we have actually retested the weekly 21 SMA, as I've been saying and touting for so long, and reversing off of it to the upside just tells me that there is bullish fervor left and a lot of bullish momentum left for the longer term. And I love the fact that we have also reclaimed the weekly 10 SMA as well. And we are now staying away from the weekly 50 SMA once more too. So there's a lot of major SMAs that the price is staying away from now, and we are rocketing away higher. And so if we're to confirm this hammer weekly candlestick, we will have to see multiple weeks of upside movement. And so on the weekly perspective, I expect us to see in the next few coming weeks or even months a retest of the previous highs back in late January and early February. And ultimately, I want to see that retest of this critical 420 level, since we weren't able to hit that at the highs of January. Okay, so with that in mind, let's take a look at our first name, CZR. So this one is a heavily lagging name within its own sector and industry. Because if you take a look at other hotel and casino names like Wynn, for example, right, we are seeing incredible bounces off of its recent lows. Another one is Hyatt, right, H. This one has been making new all-time highs for consecutive weeks. And so, other names like Las Vegas Sands has also been seeing an incredible bounce off of its recent lows. But if you take a look at CZR on the weekly time frame, it looks very sad because it's not participating with the rest of its sector and industry. But no worries here, because if you guys remember, when the market, or if the market decides to consolidate, we want to start looking at lagging names, and CZR is definitely a laggard on a technical perspective. So on the weekly time frame here, we have a huge macro base, and we're now forming this ascending triangle chart pattern. Now you guys can also see possibly a inverted head and shoulders chart pattern. So on the left here, we have our inverted left shoulder, and then we have our huge lump, which is our inverted head, and then our tiny lump to the right here, which is our inverted right, excuse me guys, right shoulder. And so with that in mind, it doesn't really matter what chart pattern that you guys see, because both chart patterns that I just talked about for this name is bullish. Okay, they're both very, very bullish. And so this week, if we're able to break over this huge major level of resistance at 55.50, we should be able to see a large breakout over this level and ultimately retest $60 and possibly hit this flatlined 200 SMA on the weekly time frame. And that is the reason why I gave you guys a target range between 60 to 62 for any type of swings that we can get for this name for this week. So on the weekly time frame here, everything looks very, very good. We were able to remount the 50 SMA and stay above the weekly 10 SMA. And for the fact that we're seeing both the 10 and 21 starting to curl up higher, we can see both of these two momentum SMAs supporting the long-term perspective uptrend. And also, we can see that potential retest of that weekly 200 SMA that is currently sitting at 61.83, or if you guys want to just round up, $62. All right, so our second name here is ONON, or on holding. So this one is really a very, very clear chart pattern. So we have a flag, okay, with this flagpole right over here, and we have a flag right over here. Now the flag is consisted of a micro double bottom. And we have our left bottom right here as indicated by this semicircle. And then we have our right bottom by this second semicircle. And so we have basically an overlaying of two bullish chart patterns. Now, price-wise, we were able to see a nice sustained uptrend for most, if not all, of last week. And thanks to this uptrend since last week, we're able to go over the daily 10 and 21 SMAs. And if we're able to hold above both the 10 and 21 this week, we can continue to see the 10 SMA curling up higher since we just started that last week, and ultimately going back over the 21 SMA, giving us a nice indication that the short-term perspective and outlook is back on the bullish side, because a couple of weeks ago we saw the cross of the 10 SMA below the 21, which indicated that the short-term perspective is bearish. But thanks to last week's movement to the upside, the short-term perspective is now flipping back to the bullish side. Now, obviously, if you guys want to play this one safely, you most likely want to get in once we break out of this descending level of resistance, which is part of this overall bull flag. Now, that is the reason why I gave you guys an entry point at 23.10 as a confirmation, because again, if the overall markets start to consolidate, and if this individual name starts to consolidate as well with the markets, and we start to see parallel price action and price trend across every individual name, like for example CZR, okay, this one will also start to consolidate and try to let off some steam from last week's move up higher. And so if we do consolidate, we will start using 23 as a major level of resistance on the daily time frame and on the intraday time frame. And so at some point, I want to see, just like SPY, a breakout over 23, and also a retest at this converging point of this descending level of resistance and the horizontal level of resistance at $23. All right, so our third name here is S. So Sentinel-1 is looking very, very similar to CZR, okay, and even on, right? Because most of these names are laggards. We're not seeing any major breakout, and we haven't seen any type of major breakouts for the past couple of weeks. And so Sentinel here is a very, very lagging name, especially it's a software/AI company. And we've seen a lot of bullish momentum going into each of those sectors or individual sectors, but this one hasn't really done that at all. And instead, we've actually seen some bearish activity as we're now making this daily ascending triangle chart pattern, just like CZR. And so for this one, thanks to Thursdays and Fridays reversal, right, bounce and reversal back to the upside, this one was able to catch back over this ascending support trend line from that ascending triangle chart pattern and remount both of the 10 and 21 SMAs, right? Now, the one thing that I like about this name for this week is that we have broken out of this $16 level of resistance. And this is a very, very specific resistance that we had to break out of if we were to see some good momentum to the upside and possibly break out of the weekly base resistance sitting at 17.35-ish. Okay, so this is a very, very heavy level of weekly resistance, right? Now, while we are here on the weekly time frame, we were able to also retest the weekly 10 SMA right at a huge weekly level of support at $15. And if you guys remember what I was saying about SPY on the daily time frame, okay, the 10 and 21 SMAs for S here on the weekly time frame clearly shows us that we've been consolidating between the 10 and the 21 SMAs on the weekly time frame. And we've been doing that for about 5 weeks now, including last week. And this all happened because we were able to remount the weekly 10 SMA, and then ultimately we retested the 21 SMA and we rejected off of it. Now we are at a very critical and pivotal point of the price trend here as we are now about to break over the weekly 21 SMA. And so on a long-term perspective on this weekly time frame, it looks like we're ready to blast up higher and go to 17.35 and ultimately reverse higher and start going back to at least the lows that we saw back in 2022. All right, so that's from a weekly perspective, but on a daily time frame perspective, there is also a chance that we can reject around 16.50, another whole number level. Now this can become a very significant level of resistance on the daily time frame, or just a small resistance area or level on the intraday time frame. But no matter what time frame that you're looking at, 16.50 is a whole number level that we need to be watching out for, since last week that is basically where we stopped, as the high of Friday was 16.49. That was the high of the day. All right, so if we do reject from 16.50, there is a chance that we can come back down to retest $16 as a new level of support. So that would be very, very good to see, since when we are in an uptrend, we tend to use old and previous levels of resistance and turn them into new levels of support. All right, so our fourth name here is DV. All right, so DV is also a very huge lagging name, a very huge laggard, right? And the reason for that is that, well, this one is also another tech name. And we haven't seen those big breakouts on this name like other software names have experienced, just like S. And this one on the weekly time frame looks absolutely amazing. And the reason for that is that we're looking at a bullish flag on a weekly time frame. And so we've been consolidating for around 5 weeks, including last week. And last week, we had good earnings reaction to the upside. As you guys can clearly see on the daily time frame, we had a nice gap up, and then we decided to hold those gains instead of completely filling in the gap up that we had on Thursday. And on Friday, we were able to hold above the 10 and 21 SMAs by closing over both of them, right? Now, with that in mind, on the weekly perspective, we're about to see the 10 SMA crossing over the 21 SMA. And if you guys have been paying attention since the beginning of this video, I said that when we get a nice crossover the 21 SMA by the 10 SMA. That indicates a very bullish momentum to the upside. And on a weekly perspective, that is for the longer term perspective. So for the fact that we have, held this support at the 21 SMA, which has now flatlined on the weekly time frame, we're able to see the 10 SMA curling up higher, and eventually it will cross over the 21 and continue to support the price up higher. And ultimately, I want to see a breakout over 28.50, or if you guys want a confirmation entry, over $29. And this is a huge level of resistance, as you guys can clearly see from this huge macro base that spans over a year since this base started in January of 2022. Right? So this is a very, very large base. And now that we've been moving sideways for more than a year, this has officially become a accumulation base. So now that it's classified as an accumulation base, we can be confident that we should be ready to see a big breakout over 29 and ultimately going back to the highs of the IPO days. All right, so last but not least, we have EXAS. So I'll keep this one short since I've already mentioned this one last week, and also it was one of the names that we were watching last week as well. So on the weekly time frame, we have this very nice bull flag, or just simply a nice descending level of resistance and descending level of support, which creates a macro descending channel chart pattern. And thanks to Friday's gap up and hold of that gap and a lot more, we're able to see a gain back over this descending level of resistance for the first time. So 2 weeks ago, we saw a very, very nasty rejection, which ultimately allowed us to close below the weekly 10 SMA. But thanks to last week's price action, we were able to close over the 10 SMA, which will eventually lead to the 21 SMA catching up very, very soon. Now, again, if we do have consolidation in the markets for this single week, we can see EXAS kind of holding out between 68 to around 65. And if you go back on the daily time frame over here, 65 is where the 21 SMA should be starting to kind of flatlining over here. But for now, we'll see a slight curl up higher due to the price and due to the price rising rapidly to the upside last week. Now, if we do consolidate, again, I expect us to not come back down below this descending channel, because if we do, then we will lose that bullish momentum and we can start seeing hints of a sell-off again once we are back below this descending level of resistance. And most likely, if we do that, we will see a gap fill between Thursdays and Fridays gap up. All right, that is it for this video. Make sure you guys leave a thumbs up down below. And if you guys aren't subscribed yet, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and keep your notifications on whenever I do post a video on this channel. Have a great rest of your night, and I'll see you all tomorrow in the live stream. Good luck.